Hi, you guys. Nice to see you again. This is Richard Sachs. This is Lost Arts Radio, and this is our Sunday guest show. And if you notice something a little bit different about this show, we're doing it live because, usually on the Sunday shows, we have guests all over the world, and the schedules are difficult to coordinate, and we record everything in advance. Doesn't make it any less relevant in my mind. It's just that right now we have a guest that's time sensitive to the developing situation with coronavirus stuff and government developments connected to that and all the impending medical martial law possibilities and things like that. So we didn't want to fit it into our usual recorded schedule and, record it with the guest and then play it when we had time 3 or 4 weeks later. So this is the first live Sunday show we've done in a long time. I don't even remember how long. If you're hearing this on Blog Talk Radio, it's delayed because couldn't put it all together at one time, but most of the platforms we are. And we'll get right to the guest in a minute. But I kind of wanted to set the stage by mentioning that this is a very unusual, kind of abnormal situation in a number of ways. One is that in my mind, I think Dr. Boyle was right. We shouldn't be having BSL 3 and 4 labs operating in the world at all. I mean, I agree with him. I can't think of any legitimate function for them whatsoever, but, I'm not even a medical doctor, so maybe some of you guys watching can correct me. But I think what's happening is they're operating under cover of something humanitarian, and it's really the opposite, and there's been massive funding of these labs for the development of bioweapons. And the purpose of those is destroy humanity, the old destroy humanity thing. And it's not even a sensible weapon in the conventional sense, is that most of these that we've seen so far, they don't have any way to be used as a defensive weapon because they spread all over the place, unless your enemy is humanity. And that brings up a whole other way of looking at it. I think that is the case. And so it's not being done by mistake. It's being done on purpose. And as Dr. Boyle pointed out, that the current crisis originated in a university lab in the U.S. It was sold 5 years ago to Wuhan, to China rather, and developed further in the BSL-4 lab, which shouldn't exist, also in Wuhan, China. And now, of course, the regular media won't talk about that, but that's the first abnormal aspect of the situation. The second one is that when we're depending on a combination of chemical agriculture that, through no fault of the farmers who have been well educated to think that poisoning the food before you eat it is actually advanced science. And I mean, you might say that common sense is missing from society right now, and real science has been replaced by complete indoctrination in things that are self-destructive. That's a big topic, of course. You combine that with when the food leaves the farms and it gets processed to death in the food processing companies, so it will turn into something you can sell as indefinite shelf life, staying fresh for years. That's not food that can sustain the immune system, vitality, health, resist aging, so-called aging. That's food that's designed to be great for the medical model because it's incredible epidemics of degenerative disease to the point that it's considered normal. And it's not normal at all. We're not designed to fall apart and, die at the end of our life because the body self-destructed. That's not natural. What I've seen in my own research going back 50 years and more is that we're designed to stay in great condition until we are done with this lifetime, and then we leave. And it doesn't have to be like a bell curve where you're feeling good for a while and then you plateau out, and then the last decades of your life are like increasing hell on earth. I don't think that was the design. So when you combine the fact that we're eating and drinking all kinds of poisoned, degenerated food and drinks, and the water's being poisoned with chemicals in almost all the cities that are supposedly good for your teeth and things, and that's complete, contradiction of what's actually on the CDC site itself. And when I studied that, I saw, well, they're just figuring that none of us can read or understand things anymore, so they just hide it in plain sight, so to speak. When you combine all these factors with the pesticides in the environment and the hormone disrupting chemicals and pesticide residues and all kinds of things besides food, and then people are fooled into getting hooked on drugs, not just medical, but marijuana, which is a really bad idea to smoke it into your lungs if you want to keep your lungs, which most people I would think would want to do, or any other kind of drugs, illegal drugs, heroin, over-the-counter painkillers. Any of that stuff just kills your immune system. And, before long, I'm sure we'll have to say, oh, drugs are the best thing, injectable and oral drugs are the best thing to ever happen to science, and everybody needs to be on them. And if you're not, you're going to be punished and not be able to do business in society. That's where it's going. And I would really like to see it not happen. But right now, with the current situation, which I think really is a health crisis, the virus is real. It was designed very carefully to do as much damage as possible. It's a de facto joint effort between the US and China to develop something that could do maximum damage, and it's very successful at that so far. And I don't think most of the people in the regular levels of the government and industry even know that. But look at Dr. Boyle's video that we put up a couple of weeks ago on lostartsradio.com, and you'll fill in the blanks in some of your own understanding. In spite of that, there are natural remedies that can work against that it's going to soon become unacceptable to talk about. And all you can talk about and praise is drugs and injectables. But nature has been producing great antivirals for thousands of years. And even some of you monitors and spies who are watching our program, you could benefit from knowing about this too. You need to wake up and realize that the people that you're censoring, a lot of them are trying to give you valuable tools and understanding that you could use too for your own families. So pay attention and rethink the whole anti-free speech thing. It's not a good idea, because a lot of times you get useful information from sources that you don't necessarily expect it from. Antivirals that are natural, which means they have zero negative effects, no side effects. They don't destroy your liver, little things like that. They don't cause potential death in a certain percentage of the people that take them. They're not like pharmaceutical drugs. They actually work without hurting you. Amazing concept. And that's the basics of all real medicine. Some exceptions to that are in cases of extreme trauma, putting people back together after accidents. But as Dr. Circus said on our show a few weeks ago, even that could do with a lot less toxic drugs that they're using in the process of saving people's lives, and it would be the best of both worlds. But as far as degenerative disease, infectious disease, aging, stuff like that, the natural world is full of things that work with 100% safety, and that's a good combination. But that's not what we're going to get into mostly today. We talked, maybe next Saturday, I'll talk to you about that, coming from the research that I've done and other people that are worth listening to. But tonight, building on the conversation that we just had with attorney Ralph Fusatola from Natural Solutions Foundation about the scenarios for medical martial law, former FEMA insider Celeste Solum has been gathering a lot of information on that from her work over years with that organization and in other capacities. And we asked her if she'd come back on again live because it's time sensitive, what she'll be sharing with us, and looking at what are the documents and regulations and policies and laws being put in place now in the U.S. as an example to set the stage for setting aside constitutional rights that Ralph just clarified on our show with him, that those can't be set aside because they don't come from government, they come from God, and until God rescinds them, which I don't expect to have happen, Government can't take that part and take them away from you itself, but it's doing it anyway. And we want to know the details of how that's happening with Celeste, and that kind of, not to just panic and feel bad, but to be strategically aware of what our situation really is, what's developing, what's coming up, and that way positive responses that are helpful to people can be put together, which is very difficult or impossible to do if you don't know what's happening. So let me see, to get the understanding of all that, if I can add Celeste successfully with this super high-tech system called a laptop computer, and it's been working, so let me see if I can do that here. Celeste, coming to us from the rocks in western Montana. Celeste, are you there?
I'm here.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
I don't know if you heard it. I just kind of introduced what we're talking about and where you've been and things that you want to add to the situation. I just said that this is all very unnatural, both in the fact that the virus wasn't in nature, didn't come from nature. It's more of a danger than the natural viruses that I know about. And the other unnatural thing is that our health has been undermined by being put onto fake food and coming out of poison farms where the farmers have been trained to spray poison on their food before they give it to us to eat, and chemicalize the soil, which messes up the microbiome of the soil, which is analogous to what's in our gut. And then it gets processed to death and then fed to us, and we're supposed to have an immune system after that. So there's these different things that are being put together. And we just finished with a guest named Ralph Fusatola, an attorney for Natural Solutions Foundation, who was clarifying that what I thought was true is true, that the rights that everybody has are not a gift and a privilege from government. They come from God, and to me, you have them from when you're conceived, not from when you're born, but in any case, you have them. And government can't pass a rule and take them away or suspend them until they think it's safe to give them back. But that's what's happening anyway. And how that's happening, I thought maybe you could explain to people a little bit more, not to get them all upset, but to have a strategic awareness of what is being put together to get to the next step so that we can come up with constructive, positive responses that might make things better. That's where we're coming from.
So one of the things that's happening right now, if you've watched Vice President Pence and the coronavirus team,
Right,
is that they are using something called the emergency clause. And the emergency clause has 3 words: health, safety, and it can be well-being or welfare. And
emergency clause of what, Celeste? Not of the Constitution. So it's got to be of something else.
well, it's a clause that's used during an emergency to suspend the Constitution.
What document does it come from? I mean, is it law? Is it a special secret agreement? I mean, it's not in the founding document. So what is it?
It's a gray hole, or a black hole, you might call,
Okay.
in the Constitution. I mean, it's not specified, but it is used, and it was left open for public health during the time of the Founding Fathers, because emergencies, disease, pestilence, sanitation were really important issues back in those days.
Is it actually in one of the articles in the Constitution that people could read?
No, they just left it out. And so
Okay.
what is happening now, this has been used at the federal level, and it's being used at the state level. It's very abused. Most people, the only people that really know about the emergency clause are politicians, attorneys, and lobbyists.
Do we know when it was started, when it first came up?
The first time that I came in contact with it was it was after 9/11 is
Okay.
when I first discovered it. And now they're really doing something shifty, because I've been reporting on this emergency clause and calling them out on it, and they got word. I mean, so they know that we're observing what they're doing, and we are planning like we're doing tonight. We're just two folks talking about solutions. And so they're aware that they're not, they almost think they're like a deity, like, we're supposed to bow down to whatever they say, but they have forgotten that they are actually public servants and we're paying their salary. So, but anyway, so this, like 3 nights ago, I couldn't sleep. And so I was watching the new briefs. And so there was Vice President Pence, and he said for the health and safety. And then he had the lady from the Who. I don't know her name.
Not the band.
Not the band. No, the band has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
The World Health Organization lady that's on the team, and she finished it. So now they're getting smart, because we're observing, and we are observing that for this emergency clause to see when they say it and how they say it, so that we can determine our strategies. And so now they've split it up. So now 2 people are saying it, but what the deal is they are under a unified command, which means it's kind of like the old Roman phalanx technique. So they are operating as one unit. So even though 2 people are saying half the clause, it is one, because they are one. They are operating on a unified command. So
does this have anything to do with the secret continuity of government agreements and things that they can put into motion in that situation?
Yeah, I actually think I might do a show on continuity of government and a couple things like that so that we can understand about that.
Okay. We'll have to do that again too.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, bring it in whenever you think it's relevant. But I mean, the bottom line is that it sounds like they try to make it really impressive, and it's, I mean, emergency clause, that's incredible, right? But when you take away all the impressive part of it, they basically just made it up, because it's not in any founding documents. It hasn't been passed as a regular law. It's just something they can refer to when they want to set the law aside. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it sounds like.
Well, they did put emergency powers, police powers, for communicable diseases, and that's what they did back in August 15th of 2016. Health and Human Services passed an 88-page document for communicable diseases. It metriced out coronavirus and let's see, Ebola was in there, either MERS or SARS, one of them, maybe both of them were in there. And so it talked about all of them, even the coronavirus.
But this is an agency basically initiating a policy that becomes a de facto law without Congress. When they just said, this is our policy. And sometimes I think they let the public talk about it and say, no, don't do this. And then they say, thank you very much for your comments, and here's the policy anyway. And it becomes a law, basically.
Actually, what they do with your comments is they see why you object to certain things, and then they approach you with the Hegelian dialectic and get you to compromise your belief system and say, well, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? What if we say it this way? And then they get you to buy in to their program or regulation. So that's what they use your comments for. They don't use it to listen to you. They are not listening to what you're saying. They are basically just using the comments to overcome the barriers to a public adoption of this regulation.
So they adapt the wording of what they're going to do to make everybody happier.
to make it sound prettier, or
Okay.
they might give you an incentive, say, hey, we'll give you some popcorn or a keychain if you if you
Yeah.
go along with this.
That would be worth it. So what did HHS do in 2016 again?
So that was a regulation dealing with communicable disease and emergencies, which is where we find ourselves right now.
Okay.
So that particular document, when the World Health Organization defined the coronavirus as an emergency, and then the White House said that they agreed and that they were going to operationalize things. There were several things that they were going to operationalize, and one of them was that 88-page communicable disease regulation, and other things were like global governance. So at the end of this, they're going to just, our form of government is going to be taken away, or at least that's the goal.
Is that in the 88 pages?
No, that's a separate thing that has come on my radar, and I've been doing a series. It's 18 points, and it's very comprehensive. It covers every sector, from our food to entertainment, to robots, to the way we travel, migration. I mean, social interaction between people. I mean, it is extremely comprehensive.
Wow.
And so they're basically kind of, you've heard of the CRISPR technique. They're kind of cut and pasting this global governance in right now while the public is distracted with the coronavirus, and they've got this, they're just implementing it, and we're so distracted with coronavirus, we're not seeing it. And when we come out the other side, we will not have a republic any longer. We will have this form of global governance.
So is that being implemented by steps through supranational agencies kind of taking over more and more by stages? Is that how it's going?
Well, it used to be incrementalization by the United Nations, but it is no. With this coronavirus, this was the big deal. This was to get the world to come to a grinding stop and then to replace the whole system. They were ready for that.
Okay.
And so that's what they're in the process of doing.
What will be the structure, do you think, after that, instead of sovereign nations?
It will be like global governance as you understand it, how I understand it. The United Nations feels that they would be the head. I don't think it's really the United Nations. I think it's a few elite personages that have been running the planet for a long time, behind the shadow, behind the veil, behind the curtain, however you want to put it.
Right, but they could use an organization like the UN to be the public facade of it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what about in the immediate present, with the idea of rights being set aside and things like that? How is that being put together?
So in this 88-page document on communicable diseases, it goes in exactly what they can do. And so we talked a couple weeks ago, and we were not really at the point of quarantines and apprehending people and this type of situation, but we're there right now. For people's safety, people are being quarantined. I actually have a friend who I'm a good friend with, and I texted him. He works at the hospital in Kirkland, in Washington State, where there have been some deaths. And I heard that the CDC had come in and confiscated all of the communication devices, and they sent a strike team there. And so I texted him and I said, "Are you okay?" And I didn't hear for several days, and then I got persistent, and I tried to text him again, and then I get this strange, it wasn't my friend, and it was just like one word, and it was twice. And I almost felt like today, I even had the words typed out in in the text that I was going to call law enforcement because I did not feel that he was all right, because I had not heard from him. And then I thought, you know what, I'm not going to do that because I think law enforcement wouldn't help him. They'd be after me. So I
Right.
just said, I think I'd better just leave this alone, because it was obvious that his phone had been confiscated and somebody else was monitoring that.
So if his phone is gone, how can you reach him anyway, right?
I can't, because he's locked in that facility. He works there, and I'm sure they're not letting him leave. I'm sure he's there for the duration, however long that is.
And what kind of a team did you say goes there to do that?
Well, no, this is a strike team that came in. So the doctors and nurses were a little bit overwhelmed. So what they do is they send a strike team in. And in this case, it's medical professionals. It would be doctors, nurses, immunologists, that type of thing. It could be, for wildfires, there's strike teams for that. There's different strike teams depending on the type of emergency. There could be a strike team in an earthquake situation where, let's say, a city, there was a very bad earthquake and the resources got overwhelmed. So they'd send in a strike team, like, say, with FEMA dogs to get people out of the rubble, that type of thing.
Okay. So what do you think the steps will be from this point on in that area of Washington where that's happening? Similar situations like that.
So right now, we're in the process of social distancing. They're telling everybody, and it's not just in Washington, it's everywhere. Stay home if at all possible. Don't go to church, don't go to the grocery store, don't go to football games, or I guess it's not football season. I don't know what basketball season. I don't know what season.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I've been busy with a few other things.
Yeah, whatever sports entertainment is right now. Don't go to the opera, this type of thing.
In other words, turn off the economy.
In that sense, yes. Well, it's not only that, it's distancing a person from other people. Especially, they're saying elderly should not go out. Anybody with any health issues should not go out. So that's the first thing that they're doing. Then the second thing that they're doing is they are quarantining people that have the virus, which that is a smart thing, but we're starting to see those quarantines spread, like we did in China, where they were quarantining whole cities.
Yeah.
And we may see quarantine of whole states. So that we're just working our way in. How fast can that happen? Pretty fast. I mean, it could happen overnight. And I did have a question that was asked to me, well, how fast? Up until this point, things have been pretty voluntary, but we are in the process right now of transitioning from voluntary to mandatory. So pretty soon you're going to see governors, mayors, this type of thing say, this is no longer voluntary, this is mandatory. After that, we're going to start seeing if you are not in compliance. Let's say they've put a curfew in your city and you're not supposed to go out, and you go out, then you can be apprehended. You can also be apprehended if, let's say, we're talking and you start sniffling or coughing, then the little electronic spies can dispatch the proper authorities to you and say, okay, you're quarantined. Or a neighbor sees you coughing and hacking as you're watering your flowers outside, they can call the authorities, kind of like the brown shirts, and
this is
say,
like the red flag laws for firearms, right?
Yes.
I saw a person with an unauthorized cough.
Yes. And pretty soon you are going to have to prove, once the vaccine and treatments come on board, you're going to have to prove that you've taken everything to interact in society. That
Right.
means you might not be able to go out. If, let's say, you're a non-vaxxer, you may not be allowed to go into a grocery store, use public transportation, go into a
Uh-huh.
federal building or whatever, even
Yeah.
maybe your job.
Yeah, which means they don't have to enforce it door to door. This is a much
No.
more sophisticated way to do it.
Well, in China, I'm sure you've seen, have you seen those YouTubes of the drones? Papa, you don't have your mask on.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So they're using these sophisticated technologies, and there's more than drones. There's nanoparticles that they can activate and actually tell how you're feeling. And have you heard about the hydrogel option that they're thinking about?
Tell me about it, and I'll
So
let you know.
basically, this is a thing. I don't know what else to call it. Um,
Okay.
it's a hydrogel, and I was watching it because they were developing the technique because they wanted to put a chip in your brain, but they didn't want to have to do brain surgery. So
Mhm.
they did this hydrogel. And so what they're going to do with the coronavirus is they're going to inject this hydrogel into your body, and it fuses in with your tissue, and it becomes one with you, and it spreads. Once it gets in your body, it spreads, it assembles inside of you, and it makes you one with a computer. It turns you into a live computer interface. And the only thing I think of when I think of this thing is like, what about hacking and all the trouble that I have with computers and electronics? Can you
Right.
imagine if that's in your body? You have no, I mean, what do you do? And
Yeah,
there,
I wonder who has the rights to the movie for that horror show too, because that sounds like The Blob or The Thing or something like that. It's
so
perfect.
what they're selling it to people as is that it will tell you, it's a big sensor basically, and it
Uh-huh.
will take your temperature, your blood pressure, and it's going to let the health authorities know that you're sick before you even know. So you're
Right.
going to get a knock on the door before you even have a sore throat or a headache or anything.
Well, and I suspect to be efficient, that gel should make you sick too. So it just saves a lot of questions.
Well, it's a silicon base, so
Yeah,
you can take that ball and run with it.
right. Exactly. Not a health food.
No, no.
So those things don't sound very hopeful at the moment. I mean, those are pretty nasty, but I suspect that the higher levels of the power structure must be really excited right now because
Yes.
this is such an incredible opportunity to finally get rid of all dissent and control everything.
Yes, they've waited a long time for this time, and they're watching it real time. Sometimes when I look at these dashboards that show what's going on,
Hmm.
uh, you can almost see them watching and just watching the misery and the death and the carnage that's happening. And
Yeah.
it's just very sad. I guess whole cities, I was listening to something last night, whole buildings in China, there's nobody left, or maybe one family is
Right.
left out of a whole building. They're
Yeah.
gone.
I've been trying to decipher the information coming out of China right now, and there's a lot of propaganda saying everything's getting a lot better. And I've heard that they're running factories with no people in them just to show that the lights are on and everything's running normally and things like that. But it's not exactly what's going on.
That's true. That's true.
Just more of a lockdown on information now than there was before.
Yes.
So, and Italy is a place where there's a lot developing now too, right? I mean, they have what, quarantines 16 million people as of this morning, something like that.
So I posted just before came on air a special report called Clade X and COVID-19. And you can actually see real time, and uh, I walk you through what you're seeing. and they deploy different strains of COVID-19 in different areas of the earth, and they come from different animals even, and they have different, as what I call it, the different faces of the coronavirus. So it's got MERS and SARS, HIV and coronavirus.
Right.
So, and then it comes from, I always want to say a civet, and a pangolin,
Yeah.
bat.
Not animals that most people are familiar with, I think, right?
Right. So they did this whole pandemic exercise called Cladex. And basically it was to introduce new life forms, because they knew that they were going to be introducing new life forms, plus things were going to go extinct, and then other species would be coming in.
Right.
And so this is the first, so they did this in 2018, and there's this whole new classification of life. And this is the first time that they've had a new pathogen come, and they're just excited. It's within this system, and they're watching the clades. That's why it was put together with so many different things. I mean, it was put together with so many different things for many reasons, then the body can't fight it off.
So this is like geoengineering meets GMOs meets biotech and a few other things like that. Yeah. Geoengineering 2.0.
4.0.
Or 4, yeah. Interesting. And the only real, health-related countermeasures that people actually have that are not as dangerous as the problem are more natural things, silver and vitamin C and antiviral herbs and stuff like that, which I think will probably soon not be allowed to talk about, I suspect.
Yes.
False information, stuff like that.
Yes, because it's a non-medical solution. They claim it's a non-medical solution because they say there's no science behind.
Right. It's not in the journal, so it can't be true.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to journal owners, actually, several of them off record, and they've told me when I was first getting interested in this, and I said, I'm finding a lot of information in respected journals that's actually not true, because it's stuff that I have direct experience with about natural countermeasures for things that they say are, so dangerous and terrible. And I said, if I came up with a wonderful cure for some incurable disease and it didn't require anything toxic or anything or invasive, would you print it in your journal? And they said, absolutely not. It would really upset our sponsors. We can't do stuff like that. So it's a pretty pervasive system.
So I hear you're going to have Dr. Bill on your show?
Yeah, he's going to be on, we'll record with him tomorrow. No, when is it? We have him down on Wednesday, and then we have to decide when to play it. We'll probably play it sometime soon after. But what Dr. Bill is working on, as you guys may not know, is a system that he's come up with in his own medical research, which is giving people by breathing a gaseous form of a substance that he says is completely harmless, but that can be activated by ultrasound or light close to the surface of the body. And when it's activated, it attaches onto viruses, parasites, tumors, little things like that, and destroys them without destroying the body, which could be quite useful. And I don't think if it really does what he says, which apparently there's some experience with it showing that it does, I can't imagine that it would be allowed to go anywhere, but he's still thinking that it will. So
we just talked last night.
Oh, really? Okay.
There is a new development that there is a way that people here can access maybe not as potent treatment as what they're doing there, which is in the official medical, hospital.
Right.
But it's a do-it-yourself on the cheap that any American can do and it has the potential to kill the coronavirus and any tumors they might have. So you're going to have to talk to him about it. It's pretty exciting. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it's coming right up. So anything like that, if they can get out to everybody before they're stopped and people get healthy, the only people who wouldn't like that would be really frustrated to the ones trying to expand the crisis. But to all the regular people, it would be great. And I think it has to be a way to get it out suddenly to everybody that would make it feasible to do.
So this is basically two things, spirulina, which you're familiar with.
I know about that. Yeah.
And a grow light. And that's it.
That's not too hard to get a hold of.
Nope. With those two things, you can treat coronavirus in your very own home.
That would be much more advanced than what he was even telling me a few days ago.
Yes, we were just talking about this. He was so excited. We had quite a lengthy conversation about it. So we're going to actually do an interview in the week after next.
Okay, good. So spirulina is, but it can't be in a gas form. You must just take it orally, right?
Like I said, it's not quite as potent as what they do in the hospital, but he said you take 8 spirulina. I don't want to steal his thunder, but I'm giving you a teaser.
No, it's okay.
Then your listeners can ask the questions, the tough questions when he's on. So you build up to 8 spirulina.
You're talking about tablets, right? Or capsules or something.
Yeah, however it comes. And then just expose yourself to the grow light. Get a grow light as tall as you are. And there you go.
Wow. That's pretty exciting. So, yeah, that's getting down to the level where it sounds safe even to me, because I don't mind being in grow lights or eating spirulina. I think those are
both of those are, I'm okay with both of those too,
Yeah.
Simple fixes. But that's the way it's supposed to be. Light has always healed. After a long cold winter, when the sun is streaming in, and most people have had the cold or the flu or whatever they've had in the winter time.
Right.
And that sun, you just feel so good. Not only it lifts your spirit, but your body, it is healing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a critical element of the immune system. I think that's why they tell everybody that it's going to kill you and never be in the sun. I've heard that officially the sun is radiation to make you think of it like some kind of a nuclear fallout thing or something, and that there's no safe level. So dark glasses, heavy sunscreen, long sleeves, it's good guidance. It means the opposite of that is going to really help you. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that light ends up being one of the key elements. And I think it is, our deficiency in sunlight is really a key element for health. And this is real information that is not often talked about. People with dark skin, and I'm not going to call them a different race. I don't even believe in that. We're all made of spirit, in my opinion, wearing these different costumes, but called bodies. But if your costume has a darker skin color, it's melanin that's filtering out more of the sunlight. And if you're in a place that's not extremely sunny, you're going to be deficient in the energy that's coming from the sun, and you need even more of it. And then, you'll be more susceptible to things if you don't get it. So I know I am not interested in prescribing anything to anybody, but when I was in a situation where I wasn't getting enough sun, I would use D3, from a really good organic source. And that was a good substitute. I mean, if you can't get the best, which is the sun. But I think there's all these supposed mysteries, about why do the people with darker skin have a worse time with certain health conditions. And I think that's the reason. It's about sun.
I agree. I mean, I can hardly wait in the springtime to get out in the sun and put my hands in the dirt, get grounded,
Right.
have the sun, have the frequency of the earth, and it just gives you this peace and well-being.
Yeah, you feel happier right away.
Yes.
It,
And,
it's
and I get, because I'm in a log cabin and I live in the
Yeah.
Rocky Mountains. So
Right.
obviously you can't go out. I mean, I do walk in the snow, but it's different because you've got 18 layers on.
Yeah, you're not in a bikini when you do that, probably.
No, obviously
At
not.
80 below zero.
Yeah,
You'd
yeah,
stay fresh for a long time that way, frozen solid.
yeah, yeah. So I really look forward to spring, and I can tell that this morning when I went out to do my chicken chores and walk Mississippi, that the robins were starting to sing, and
Yeah,
so it's a sure sign that spring is around
really
the corner.
great. I think they're planning to have spring in a very short time. Isn't it like the 21st or something like that?
I hope they
Something like
do it,
that.
and I hope this year that we have bluebirds. Last year, usually I have hundreds of bluebirds courting, and I have
Uh-huh.
these bluebird houses so that they can have their little nest boxes. And last year I only had 2 pairs, and they only stayed for a couple days. They never did nest. They just stayed a
Wow.
couple days and they were out of here. So I hope
Hopefully it's better this year, huh?
yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
I just saw a video by Dr. Bergman that he's a really inspiring guy, I think. He's a doctor in Southern California, Bergman, and he's got lots of videos up about all kinds of things, and he's got a lot of insight into how nature works. And he was saying something interesting today in a video about the virus, and that was that I don't know if this is true personally because haven't checked on it, but he said it dies in the high 80s Fahrenheit.
Yes.
Is that true, you think?
Yeah, I got, so the first week that there was coronavirus, the medical doctors in China had medical reports that you could get a hold of. So I got a hold of them. And yes, I translated them from Chinese into English. And that was one of the things that they noted, that at 85, this virus is, at least it goes into hibernation. It may not kill it, but it's not active.
Some kind of heat therapy, saunas, being out in the sun, stuff like that could be very valuable.
Yes.
And apparently that's true of some other viruses too, because the body has this thing called making a fever, which we're unfortunately taught to block at all costs now, but it's actually not a mistake of nature. It's a useful thing that wipes out a lot of different kinds of pathogenic viruses, and maybe this is one of them.
Yes, yes. If it recognizes, this virus is very different. Some people's body does not mount a response because it doesn't recognize it as a foreign invader. So it's kind of got that stealth camo type situation going, because it's so foreign that nobody has ever experienced this thing before. So
a couple of other things that Dr. Bergman mentioned that I've heard from a bunch of other doctor friends and I knew about too, is that nanosilver and vitamin C are both really effective, as well as certain herbal antivirals, which you probably know about, I suspect, right?
Absolutely.
Which ones do you like?
So I do, tincture-wise, I do usnea, which is a moss, a lichen that grows in the trees in the Pacific Northwest. Okay. And I make a tincture. And then there's Lomatium dissectum, which is desert parsley. It grows in rock slide areas. It's in the carrot family. And both of those were used during the 1918 flu. And people that took those during the 1918 flu did not die.
Wow,
and if they did contract the 1918 flu, it was of lesser severity. So it was very good. So it is, they're very resiny. So it's kind of strong. So I make mine in a ginger and honey tea. And I put tinctures in, and then I use, so my antiviral protocol is vitamin A, 100,000 units for 5 days. And then vitamin D3, you can take, if you take 5,000 a day, then you can bump up to 10. Some people can take a lot more. I did get a really high powered one, and I found my body couldn't tolerate that.
Mhm.
Monolaurin, which is a derivative of the coconut, and you take, I personally take 1,500 milligrams. I think it comes in 400 milligrams and 600 milligrams.
What's it called
It,
again? I'm not familiar with that.
it's monolaurin, Monolaurin, or En,
Wow, Lauren. Okay.
and it's a derivative of the coconut. So it's
Uh-huh.
very antimicrobial. Then
Okay.
I take lysine. You can take up to 9,000 units.
We're not
For
prescribing here, are we?
No,
We're
I'm just
just
saying.
sharing experience.
Yeah, I'm just saying what I take when I get symptomatic for a virus. This
Yeah.
is what I do.
Right.
And then I take vitamin C to bowel tolerance, and I
Right.
take my buffered C. That's what I like. And then the last one that I use only in emergencies, like if I should get pneumonia or something,
Yeah.
is olive leaf extract.
Okay, that's
And
interesting.
that you can start with one and you can build up to 5. So if you take, if I take one pill and then by the next day I'm still symptomatic, the
Uh-huh.
next day I can take 2, and then I do repeat that until I reach 5. And I have gotten rid of pneumonia that way.
Wow.
One thing you have to do when you take that one, or what I have to do, but I take it anyway, is probiotics, because olive leaf will kill bacteria, virus, and fungus, but it does not discriminate between the good bacteria in your body and the
Right.
bad bacteria. So
So
you
it's
have
kind of a natural counterpart to the antibiotics, isn't it? It just kills everything.
Yes, yes. And that's what's nice, because sometimes you don't know, do I have a bacterial infection? Do I have a viral? And
Right.
with olive leaf, it doesn't matter. You're going to kill the bug.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So you don't want to do it too long, I suspect, right?
you know what? I don't, because it's a little harder on my body. But I had
Right.
a rancher friend that lived 5 miles north of me, and he
Uh-huh.
took it all the time. I could not convince him that not taking olive leaf, he thought it was the next best thing to sliced bread, you know? So what
Okay.
do you do, you know?
So you said what you do is vitamin A 100,000 units for 5 days, right?
Mm.
Just as a short-term thing, and then 5 to 10,000 of D3. You use that all the time, or just for a little while?
I do 5,000 every day, but if I'm feeling like I'm coming down with something, I bump it up to 10.
Okay. Yeah, because I used to take that all the time when I didn't get enough sun, and it was good. Um, and it's really tied into the immune system. And what about the monolaurin? What did you say you do with that?
So it's a capsule. So you just take it 3 times a day, or if you've got the lower strength capsule, I would take it 4 times a day.
Okay.
Um, to me, it's a headache. I like I like to make it simple, and I don't want to be
Yeah.
taking vitamins all day. And then there's the lysine. That is
That
very
that
effective.
lysine or glycine?
Lysine, Lysine.
Okay, and what do you do with that?
Um, it's a it's a it's a pill like thing. It's a horse pill, but it's very good if you have like cold sores. Um, it's very good, and I'm finding more and more uses for it. Like if you get shingles, that's a
Mhm.
great thing to treat, especially before, like, as you first notice it's coming on. If
Mhm.
you're a person that gets that type of a thing, um, that's what I've noticed. That I just take this lysine right away. I hit it hard the first few days. But one thing I've noticed this year that's different is usually I can just take my antiviral protocol. By the next day, I feel perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And so usually I've only taken it for 3 days. This year, I am not, for me, I found out the hard way, take it 10 days.
How much do you like to use
What?
per day?
I
Like
do
if you do-
I do the whole antiviral. If I'm symptomatic, I do the whole antiviral protocol,
Right.
and I'm doing it for 10 days now, where I used to do it just for 3 days, because whatever's out there is much more tenacious, and you don't want to mess with it. You do not want it to. A lot of people kind of will take something and they say, "Oh, I feel better," and then they come back.
And then
You know,
stop. Yeah.
it
But
hits you
I meant on the lysine in particular. When you use that, how much do you like to use of that?
up to 9,000 a day.
Okay. Comes in milligrams or units?
I just say units.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And have you done anything with silver at all? Do you use nanosilver?
I've got silver, and then of course I do lemon, and I do ginger, and um, you know,
Those can be used fresh, right?
yes.
That would
As a
be
matter
the
of fact, I just
strongest
got a
option.
big deal, or a good deal, on ginger, so I'm really excited about that.
How long does ginger last if you get a bunch of ginger?
You can do it till it starts shriveling, but I'm going to plant half of it
Oh,
and
okay.
grow it inside. It's very easy to grow. I've got some ginger growing in my bathroom right now.
Yeah, I bet almost nobody knows how to grow ginger. So if you want to
I'll-
grow some indoors, what do you do?
So what you do is you get about at least a 1 gallon pot.
Mm-hmm.
If you 2 gallon would be better, but 1 gallon is nice. You want to kind of look for knobs, and this is the same way with turmeric. Turmeric is the same. So you want to get a piece of turmeric that has the knobs on it, that the health food store has not cut off, because it's those knobs is where your leaves are going to come out of.
Okay.
And so you plant it flat, so it's a rhizome.
Right.
And so you plant it flat. You don't plant it up vertical. You plant it horizontal.
Right.
And you put some rocks, or gravel, whatever you have in the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want, so that there's good drainage. And then you put some potting soil in there. And then you plant it, I would say, about an inch of soil over the top. And you keep it moist, not wet. I mean, you don't want to just super soaker.
Right.
That comes later. Once the greenery starts, then you can super soaker. But you don't want the roots to sit in water, because they'll rot.
Mm-hmm.
And you do want like a tray or something underneath, so that you do have good drainage. And there you have it. That is so easy.
And that turmeric and ginger are both tubers, right? Like potatoes.
Yep.
So the roots come out of them and they grow down into the soil, and the green part grows up above. And what's happening is, I guess, they multiply, right?
Yes.
So then you could harvest it at a certain point and take some of them out and leave some of it to grow again, or how do you do that?
So if you live in a more moderate temperature than us, we grew it in our greenhouse one year, and we planted maybe 6 or 8 ounces of turmeric,
Mm-hmm.
and we got 50 pounds.
Whoa. 50
So
pounds, how big of an area did you plant it in to get that
it
much?
was in the greenhouse. It was not a large area, but I
Like,
mean, we kept digging. I mean, I had turmeric forever. I mean, it
wow.
was just like incredible.
So that's like maybe in 100 square feet or something?
It was just like 4 by 4.
Wow, that's amazing. That must have been absolutely solid with turmeric root.
It was, and you just keep going, and you keep like you shove with your shovel. Now, of course, if you're growing it in container in the house, you're not going to have that much of a yield.
Probably not 50 pounds in a 1 gallon pot. Yeah.
No, No. But if you do have an area in your yard or your greenhouse and you want to do it, it's a lovely plant.
Now, it won't survive a winter outside, right?
They do kind of die back. They get kind of scrappy looking. But like if you lived in the South or something, maybe you could get away with growing it. It's still going to die back a little bit, but if you leave it there until the next year, it's going to come right back, and up it will come. And
yeah, I bet most people just assume you can't grow stuff like that. You have to go to the store and buy each piece.
No,
but not necessarily true.
No.
Okay.
I love doing my own. Have you ever grown mushrooms?
No, I've read about it a lot. I've never done it. That's done in the dark, though, right?
So you can get these like mushroom logs.
Yeah.
There's different, and you can get whatever your favorite mushrooms are. So chaga mushrooms are very antiviral. So you could get a chaga mushroom log and grow mushrooms. You could grow oyster mustard or oyster mustard mushrooms.
That's more advanced. You have to stick with just the oyster ones.
Yeah. Whatever kind you like, you can grow, and it doesn't necessarily, you can grow chicken in the woods. Of course, I'm very blessed. I just can go outside and harvest chicken in the woods.
Find it, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny, there's these two opposite energy type things going on at the same time. You've got all this wonderful nature stuff that you can do, and at the same time, the completely crazy people that are doing the old destroy the world thing are working on their part too. And it's going to be interesting to see what the combination of those two things ends up as, right? Seems like it's reaching a crescendo that's going to be seen.
Well, I think each one of us has to choose which path we're going to take.
Right. And
that's within our power.
Yeah, and it actually influences everything outside of you that appears to be separate. I think, too, that's supposed to be a big secret. The experimenter influences the experiment, and what we call the real world is the experiment for each one of us, I guess. So what do you see as a bottom line important thing to understand from the information rundown on what the government's getting ready for right now? What do you think is important for people to know about that?
So they're definitely going to go for the police powers. They're going to go for the mandatory. It's going to be brutal. If you remember the Bundy situation and how bad that got, that was just a glimpse of what it's going to be like, because this is going to be widespread. You're talking everybody. Scale. Yeah, it's going to a global scale, not only America, but around the world.
Yeah.
I think it's going to interfere with our travel plans, what we do, going to the store. I mean, next week, will we be able to get groceries? Who knows?
Right. Yeah, it's all tied together. I guess, they got tired of this, awakening thing that was happening all over the world and people questioning everything, which is normal to do that. And thought, okay, that's enough time. And now let's lock everything down. But it remains to be seen what the result of that's going to be. If it's going to work according to plan or not.
But each of us does have a choice. Now, there may be some consequences that we have to endure if we choose a different way. But as you and I have talked about, we can influence by choosing the right path and a different path than what the world is going right now.
Yeah, what I like to remember too is that the people who are enforcing this kind of stuff, they were trained in the corrupt educational system that we've got now, that this is actually all really good and they're saving the world and the usual saving the world thing, but they're actually underneath all the programming and they're the arrogance and the official intimidation and all that. My theory is that they're actually still human beings, and that you can reach them with subliminal intent. Even if you don't say anything, you can. Even if you don't say anything, you are. And if what you're generating is the frequency of fear and desperation and, totally tying yourself in knots, then you add to the chaos. And whatever you try to do, or path you decide to go on physically, if you're centered and wide awake and relaxed all at the same time, inside, whatever you decide to do is going to have a much better effect on those people even. And what if some of them started to question and say, wait a minute, what am I enforcing? What's going on? How did I get hypnotized into this? And I think that is possible. Could help change direction.
Yes, and even if it doesn't change anybody else, if you are coming from a place of peace and joy and love and mercy and grace, then you're a better person.
Yeah. And your experience will be completely different.
Yes.
Even if there's no difference physically, it'll still be a completely different experience. And I think it's tied together with what I've talked about before, with splitting your attention into the strategic analytical faculty, which may need to look at unpleasant things to know what's going on. And the other, it's almost like an emotional eating faculty, where you're absorbing the energy of whatever you're looking at. And if you split those and put the second one attached to whatever is most beautiful and uplifting and inspiring to you, and don't move it unless it's to something better, and you take the other strategic one and understand things, and it's not going to drag you down with it anymore. And it makes you more effective, not less. So
that's a good thought.
It's actually a workable thing that's real, not a belief. Kind of exciting. So you're going to be doing more and more of this analysis of what's going on and how it's developing in documents and policies and movements of different agencies and things like that. And if people stay up with that, which I would think a lot of them would, what are the best ways to follow what you're doing?
So I'm finishing up the last of the 18 areas of global governance tomorrow.
Okay.
And so that's for my patrons at Shepherd's Heart Farm at Patreon. And
Shepherd's Heart Farm, you said?
Yes, at Patreon. And then I do have a blog that I'll be starting up again and doing some really exciting things there, starting again this week. But I am going to do an overview, a summary of the 18 points. And what I'm going to do is synthesize it down to 3 bullet points for each one of the areas that the global governance targeted.
Okay.
Most horrific. So, like, for instance,
and wait, before you tell us, for instance, you said Shepherd's Heart Farm at Patreon, but I think what you may have meant in correct technical language is patreon.com/Shepherd's Heart Farm. Is that right? Or what's the exact way? So people
we'd have to ask Doug on that one.
Okay, we'll get his input, because patreon.com/Shepherd's Heart Farm, right? Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I don't want people not to find you.
And then also, like, this new Clay to X special report is just on YouTube. Unless they take it down, but I'm hoping that they don't take it down.
And what's it called exactly? Claydex?
Claydex, pandemic, exercise, and COVID-19.
Okay. Exercise. Okay, and you were just going to give us an example of the
Right.
bullet points, that
So
the most
yes,
horrible ones that you can come up with, I guess. Right?
yesterday I discovered that they were going to give us, so there's this war on protein. They don't want us to have protein. They want to change our whole way of eating. And so we are going to be allowed 1.2 ounces of protein. And that does not mean meat. It just means a protein of their choice a week. That is what we're going to be allowed. And we are going to be allowed 32 ounces of carbohydrates, no sugars, every 21 days.
Is this to save the world, just out of curiosity?
It is to save the world.
This should stop climate change, actually, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Where do these figures come from, that 1.2 and the 32?
From one of their documents that I
Okay.
was going over. I went into it in great depth, excruciating depth.
You know that you're like 1 out of 100 million people. Nobody reads documents.
I know.
I mean,
I am
almost nobody.
the document lady, and I do bore people to death. And it was kind of funny. I had a request from a patron today, and they said, "Oh, why don't you just copy all your bookmarks on your computer and make them available to us?" And I laughed, and I wrote, I wasn't laughing at him, but I just kind of chuckled. I wrote back and I said, you know, my bookmarks are like 1,000 and 3,000 page documents.
Yeah.
And it's not everybody's cup of tea.
That's a very mild way to say it. Yeah.
So,
And the 1.2 ounces of protein a week is really interesting when you compare it to what fitness people talk about, and especially bodybuilders and stuff like that. There's a difference there, right? 1.2 is less than 100 grams a day or something like that. So the people that result from that should be really easy to control and very cooperative, because they won't be able to actually move.
and in a crisis, people need they need protein. And with the grand solar minimum coming up, we are really going to need protein in our body. We also need protein to fight these pathogens like the coronavirus.
And it's not just any protein. I mean, I don't think you could substitute a protein powder for all your proteins in your life and do very well. It should be some kind of a high quality living protein if possible, right?
So this was another thing. Now maybe we can put our heads together and figure out what they're talking about, because I had no clue. They are developing a protein that's outside of our sensory experience. What in the world is that? I mean, so it's not something that you can taste, feel, smell, touch.
Well, the first thing I would do, and this may just be my experience with our so-called authorities and rulers, is that what you're describing is what they'll call it. It has nothing to do necessarily with what it is. So they can call it that and give you whatever they think you should have.
Soylent Green?
Maybe, or that might be too rich in protein. Maybe they don't want to do that, but just anything. It could be nanotech. It could be anything.
Well, they did. No, this was separate. They did talk about the laboratory proteins. They talked about using stem cells, growing muscles in the laboratory. They talked about that. But this was separate and distinct. I got the impression that it was something ethereal or something, but it was a protein source.
Yeah, I suspect it'll have some relation to a synthetic protein with amino acids, but it'll have special, like the biotech in the weapons labs, gain of function attributes that, maybe take over your brain, or little side effects like that. Because why waste the opportunity if they control the food?
Yeah, it was such a, I mean, I was sitting there, you're just like reading one of these sterile documents. I mean, they're not sterile, they're like science fiction. But then all of a sudden I read that and I just like, what? What is this thing?
Yeah. I think the issue is the rulers of the planet are into a dark, malicious insanity. And they're very, it's interesting that there are different kinds of intelligence that don't necessarily include common sense or benevolence, but just the ability to calculate and come up with new plans for things. And I think at this point, it's late in their agenda, and they've managed to saturate a lot of the levels of control all the way down to local, from supranational and international to local, with people whose motivations they've provided, and both the carrot and the stick. This is what you get, maybe an extra gram of protein if you're really good, or if you're really bad, something unpleasant might happen to you. And I think they're controlling most of the system right now. And what the biggest, most important thing to keep secret is the dormant, forgotten natural abilities of the regular people are so great because of what they're made out of, not the physical body, but the real person.
The essence,
at all costs, that must remain unknown. So it's like the guidance that we need, because I completely trust government and corporate guidance. It's just as long you just have to remember to reverse it, whatever is said that you have to do. And I think what that tells us is, look, become self-aware, wake up, because it's really important that you don't wait much longer to do that. And that doesn't mean just learn, this is bad happening, this is terrible thing is happening, that's not waking up. That's memorizing a bunch of facts that could be accurate and important, but waking up in terms of self-awareness. And I think it's the most carefully guarded taboo there is, as far as I can tell. And being healthy helps. It makes it easier to do that. So all the stuff that you're teaching people, how to grow things indoors, and how to use different herbs and things like that, is really critical, I think.
So yesterday I was canning some beef, and I got this idea. I thought, I'll just have a flash class and teach people how to can their own meat. Yeah. And so I called Doug to see if he was available to do that, and he was. And so some ladies and gentlemen joined me in my kitchen, and they learned how to can meat.
So is that the kind of thing that you put up on all the video platforms? Or, because that's like mini classes that you're doing in all kinds of things, right?
Yes.
So is that available to everybody?
It's on Patreon for my patrons.
Okay.
And my lowest patron is like $5. So.
And they can still see things for that amount.
They can see as much as they want. Believe me,
okay.
I've got gardening tips. I've got kitchen tips, recipes. We're a community, so there's a support system.
Okay.
So we talk within one another. We talk about the coronavirus. We talk about what you can do treatment wise, and for different things, for more than just that. Okay. We have herb of the week. We do pets, and we talk about our pets.
Great.
Just all kinds of things.
Okay, so patreon.com/shepherdsheartfarm. And they can start partaking in all that good information.
Yep.
And is that where updates come out on documents and policies and things that the agencies are doing?
So for this global governance, I started out doing an article, but it was so dense and it was hard. I mean, it's big concepts, and these are coming from the bowels of really perverted minds.
Yeah.
So I decided to do a video series instead. I switched over because I thought at least I could point things out. It would be a little bit easier to follow.
It is, yeah.
And so now I'll start back this week after I do my summary and do articles, and that's at shepherdsheart.life.
Okay, great. So what do people remember out of all this conversation before we go in a minute here?
Don't be fear and panic. Just have a peace that there are natural things. You might have to search them out. I wouldn't trust the authorities. I would go to old herb books, people that have, passed down traditions of, oh, this works for viruses, and listen to them and collect that. Like I said, vitamin C, I think, is going to be a standby.
Yeah.
A really critical, if you were on a budget, that would be my number one thing to have, because
Right.
it does keep your body alkaline. It does fight infection. So vitamin C is so important. If you can get the protocol, do the antiviral protocol.
Right.
But most of all, don't let yourself get caught up in this net of fear and panic, and because yes, we are going to have a rough road. I'm frank about that, but we don't have to choose that path for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Good thing to hold on to.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's great. And I hope you'll come back soon and give us an update on what's coming next.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Celeste.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, you guys, that was Celeste Solum. And since this will be up, hopefully, on many platforms, and you can take your time and listen to her protocols repeatedly until you get a chance to record them or write them down or something like that. And if you can't find them for any particular reason on a major platform, look at one of the new ones like Brighteon.com, and that's BRIGHTEON.com. Our channel is brighteon.com/channel/Lost Arts Radio. And if you go there, you can subscribe and get all of our videos that way. And it's a good thing to do now before you forget about it. You're able to subscribe to the channel at this point. Also, if you want to get more deeply into this stuff in an environment that's not censored, at least not yet, and it's private and it's membership only, and we can talk about anything you want. It's interactive, live. Doug and I are there every week. You can access that through planetaryhealingclub.com, planetaryhealingclub.com. I look forward to seeing you there if you want, and there are small dues, and that goes to keep our work going, which we really appreciate and depend on right now. And it all goes to our nonprofit that is basically doing everything. And if we manage to get enough funds, which, right now it's below survival level, but at some point, if there's enough that goes in there, we'll build a school where all this stuff can be actually demonstrated on the physical level, which I'd really like to do if that becomes possible. If not, we'll keep doing these shows as long as we've got the means to keep going. You can either support us by being a member of planetaryhealingclub.com and joining us in the live meetings and talking about whatever life and health situations that you're wanting support with, not medical advice, of course, because that's all forbidden, and we don't do that anyway. I'm not a medical doctor. But we can talk openly about whatever you want and try to help each other. That's the whole point of it. It's going to become a very valuable forum as time goes on and other censorship gets more intense. Everybody's invited if you want to make use of that. planetaryhealingclub.com. We've also got on our two main websites, which is lostartsradio.com or lostartsresearchinstitute.org, which is about the nonprofit. There are donate buttons on those too. And if you have resources for that, please help us if you can. Otherwise, if you're struggling for survival, don't. Just tell people about the show. And we have a live show on Saturdays now, which are dealing a lot with not just general world news, but relevant events that hopefully will be useful to you and fill in educational gaps that you might have. That's 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern on Saturdays, a half hour before the live meeting of Planetary Healing Club, and you're invited to that. If you want to communicate, you have questions and you have suggestions of topics for us to cover, suggested guests, anything that you want to put in there, we'll read them all. Just send them in at richard@lostartsradio.com, and I would enjoy hearing from you. We just want everybody to be okay. It's really simple motivation. Things are a bit challenging in the outside world. There's a lot of information that's useful, truly harmless, and it works well, and it helps you on various levels that we want to seek it out there more widely. We're working on a number of projects right now to do that. So whatever we can do to help each other, I think we should do. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys care about this sort of thing and are into helping each other. This is not a time to be all divided and fighting and hating each other and saying, you know, this person's really bad, look at the dumb stuff that they're doing. This is to upgrade what you're doing yourself. That's much more powerful. And it clears your vision so that you're less susceptible to misunderstanding things that are going on right now. Work on yourself, because as we've said a lot, it's the most effective prerequisite to helping everybody else. It's really important. A lot of times when we're under a lot of stress, you just put off taking care of yourself till later. And I think that's probably a mistake to do that. Even on a physical level, you know, start taking care of your body well. Don't eat inorganic poison food. Don't eat the additives or the poison processed dead stuff. Don't drink stuff that's bad for you. Don't smoke anything. Don't, you know, get off drugs. And if it's a medical question, find a doctor that can help you get free of drugs to the greatest extent possible. Some of them know how to do that, and you know how to do a lot of it. All of us do. And make yourself strong and calm. Learn how to relax all the time, no matter what you're doing. And things can be a lot better than what our rulers intend for us. It might even help them to their surprise, according to what we do. So anyway, thanks for being with us. Thanks for letting us be with you on the show today. Hope you have a great night, and the week coming up is really good for you. And stay in touch. We'll look at everything you send in. Okay. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon.